Hi, everybody, and welcome to the ALS United Mid-Atlantic Goals podcast. I'm your host, Tony High with ALS United Mid-Atlantic, and if you've listened to our past few dozen episodes, you know that we have spoken with people with all sorts of perspectives when it comes to ALS. This includes people who are living with ALS, surviving spouses and family members, volunteers and advocates, and people who are part of our ALS United Mid-Atlantic staff. We've also spoken with guests from other ALS United members, and we have talked with people from outside of our organization as well. Today I'm really excited to talk about our ALS United Mid-Atlantic treatment centers and what they do to support people living with ALS. We are proud to partner with many different treatment centers throughout our region in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, and I'm really proud of our partnership with Hackensack Meridian Health, Jersey Shore University Medical Center. I'm not going to say that whole name over and over again. We'll just refer to it as HMH. So we have been partnering with this great team of experts for ALS care and research for nearly a decade now, and they've expanded their role for ALS since we started partnering with them in New Jersey. Through this partnership, they've expanded access to treatment with different kinds of treatments, new therapies, and expert care from Dr. Mary Sedarous and her team. Today, I'm excited to talk with Arianna Jarosinski and Chloe LaBella, and they're going to talk about their work on assistive technology and how that's advancing to help people with ALS live better quality lives. So Arianna and Chloe, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So I know in a lot of your work, you work with communication with people with ALS, so I'm sure you can sympathize as I have to get all of that out with your whole name from Hackensack Meridian, Jersey Shore University Medical Center.
It's definitely a mouthful, that's for sure.
Yes. Well, I'm really grateful for the work that you provide because it's a service that decades ago didn't exist at all. And there is clearly a need for this kind of research and care in New Jersey. We see experts in ALS research and care all across the country, in New York, North Carolina, in Washington, D.C. area, and California. But we see like there's more and more growth in New Jersey with people like yourselves working on these issues. Arianna, why don't we go with you first? Tell me a little bit about your background and what brought you to the kind of work you're doing.
So I was actually very fortunate to have an externship within the Hackensack Meridian family before, it was Hackensack Meridian, but I came to Jersey Shore University Medical Center quickly after I started my career. And so from there, I really became interested in a lot of the adult therapies and working with adults in different means, and that includes a variety of disorders. Having been here for a little while and getting to know the clinic when they were in a different setting and seeing how the clinic worked and genuinely just becoming more acquainted with who was involved and what was going on, because prior to that, coming here, I was doing more pediatrics. And so it really was a very organic happening and becoming involved. And I will say once we became involved, it was a complete world opened up, realizing how much support our patients and our families need.
And there's a big difference between pediatrics.
It really was. Mm-hmm. So I was going to say it was a big jump from mostly pediatrics to having a lot of adults here, and then realizing sometimes we get adult referrals that those patients do end up in the clinic. But at the time when we weren't quite involved, Chloe and I, we didn't really see what that entailed and what that really meant for the families.
So Chloe, what brought you to this position and what exactly is your title and how does that fit in with the clinic work?
Sure. So my title is a speech pathologist. Of course, I've been practicing for almost 8 years with my clinical competence and 9 years, including my CF year. So I started really actually in my externships and in my CF year, kind of like Arianna, mostly in the pediatric world and realm with actually low-tech AAC. And as my years continued as a speech therapist, it just continued to evolve from low-tech into more high-tech and kind of supplemental AAC. And then as I got my job at HMH outpatient, I kind of was heading a little bit more of the AAC I don't want to say department, but kind of options for the pediatric department. And so learning through some of those devices then brought me to the adult population And then also going from there, kind of just growing and growing from learning some of the devices. I was approached to kind of help out with the ALS population involved in the clinic. And I just continued to grow and learn a little bit more as I was getting more involved in the clinic. And just like Arianna said, it was kind of really like an organic fit, just because I was learning more and more about AAC. I was learning more about how to help families. So it just really evolved from low tech, honestly, growing to high tech.
Excuse me. And you mentioned AAC. So define what that means for us, because you may say AAC all the time, but I'm sure it's a new term to a lot of other people.
Yeah, sometimes I forget. It's so fluid with Arianna and I,
Yeah.
but yeah, AAC is augmentative and alternative communication. So in its simplest form, it's just anything other than your natural voice. So you'll hear a lot of times phrases low tech versus high tech. Low tech is anything that's really not technology based. So that could be writing, it could be picture form, it could be visual boards, alphabet boards. That would be low tech. And high tech would mean anything that's kind of like battery powered or charged. So like an iPad device, a GoTalk device, where those devices, I should say, are speech generating devices. So they will have speech output as well.
Is it important to start with a low tech device and then move up, or is there a range of when and how you start with integrating this for a person living with ALS?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I
Yeah.
do feel like, Arianna, I don't know if you feel this way, but I do feel like even when I started as a speech therapist, which I feel like it truly wasn't that long ago, but I do feel like we did learn that you should kind of start with low tech technology, low tech AAC, before you should jump into high tech AAC. But honestly, I think it's changed over the last few years, especially with the adult population, because you really are working with someone who has their language developed, even maybe two languages, so English, Spanish, or whatever their languages are. So they really don't need to learn kind of grammar complexities in that. So you can jump right into high tech AAC, whether it's an app on your phone or a device, a medical grade device. Right, Arianna? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would agree, especially for our patients in the clinic. I mean, we have to do a cognitive exam on everybody for AAC, no matter if they're from the clinic or if it's pediatrics or other diagnoses. And as long as patients are able to learn and adapt, they are eligible for AAC. And it's really about maintaining what kind of communication they have and voice and being able to express themselves. So if they have the ability to either use an app on their phone right away, we don't have to start with anything lower. We can have them jump right into using an app and starting to save some phrases, getting used to it. So sometimes the apps are getting their feet wet, but it's not necessary to only start with something low tech like a board that's an alphabet board or just pictures.
And when you say a cognitive test, Ariana, what does that entail? Is that something you pass, or is it something where well, they're able to do this or that? What do you want to learn from that kind of test?
Yeah, so if we're doing a full evaluation, because in the clinic, oftentimes we're just asking, how their recall is, if they're remembering things day to day, how they're doing with routines, and if they need assistance with, remembering appointments throughout the day or remembering to do day to day tasks. But if we're doing an actual evaluation, we do have a little assessment that we do. And it's all about how their spelling is, how their answers to listening to some paragraphs, if they can tell us what happened in the paragraph, answer some yes or no questions based on things that we've done. Can they follow simple directions? Are they able to follow through on two-step directions, three-step directions, which seems silly, but if you're using a device and if you're using an app, spelling is important because it's not speech to text, it's actually texting to speech. So they do have to be able to spell, they have to be able to follow a sequence of typing it in and then pressing a button to speak. So it is relatively simple, but it is something that we do first just to make sure that they'd be appropriate for certain types of augmentative and alternative communication. And so we do work very closely with the family in asking them kind of what are some limitations. It may not be cognitive, it may be some limitations because they don't typically use their cell phone. So now we're getting them used to using their cell phone. It is important to tease that out though. If it's more of a technology thing or if it's more having difficulty remembering how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So along those lines, when do you come into the conversation? Because I know that when it comes to ALS care, we were so proud of the multidisciplinary approach that we have at HMH and at all of our clinics. And so is that something where you meet with a patient and their caregiver the first day or the first visit, or is it their next visit after they feel comfortable? How soon are you talking to them?
So now we are talking with them and introducing our role right at the very first clinic visit, the multidisciplinary clinic visit. So what we usually do is kind of like I said, tell everyone our role, family and patient, let them know how we're going to monitor their communication, if they have any signs and symptoms of dysarthria, if it's continuing to affect their everyday life and their activities of daily living, such as talking on the phone, going to doctor appointments, social events. So we're really there right at the beginning, and we are always letting them know from the first visit all the way till their 15th, 20th, but whatever it is, that we are there to support them. We are there to always acknowledge all of their wishes. However they want to communicate, whether it is writing on a board, on a boogie board, or whether it is writing on a static board, if they want the speech generating device. So we're always there from day one, kind of just monitoring things for the patients and the families.
I'm glad you
Yeah, we
mentioned
always say we give them a lot of.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say we always tell them we give them a lot of information in the beginning, but it's really just so they have it. And if they eventually go back and look at the materials we gave them, they know either who to call for more questions or next clinic date. They're like, hey, someone mentioned this. Can you go over it again? And it's overwhelming, but it really is just so they have the information and then they know that they can ask, that it is a possibility.
Arianna, I'm glad you said that it's overwhelming in a way, because as you're speaking, it reminds me of this scene from the TV show The West Wing, where the Santos family has won the election, and the first lady sees all these people at the White House that now work for her, and in some way, it's intimidating to her. But also, they're there to make sure that their life is comfortable and they're handled. How do you guys make sure, Arianna first, and then Chloe, that when people come to the treatment center and they see the huge team and they're already stressed out about ALS, that they leave there feeling at ease instead of just more worried?
I don't want to speak for Chloe, but I think especially for Chloe and I, not everyone is having communication difficulties right off the bat. Sometimes they are, and we will go more in depth if they are the first day, but really it's just about us letting them know that we are here for them and we are there to make their goals happen. If they know they're having communication issues, then we'll say, okay, what are you looking for? And then we can at least do the work on the back end to get them either set up or the resources they need. And it's mostly just, we know it's overwhelming. Here are these papers. Here is our contact information. And if you want, we can either contact you in a week or two, so you've had a little time to sit with it, or contact us when you're ready, kind of thing. But at least they know they can call someone or they can email someone when they're ready to actually look at the materials if they weren't quite ready there. What do you think, Chloe? It's similar?
I think you summed it up perfectly. I think we always acknowledge that the first day, of course, is always overwhelming because it's something new. It's a new process. There's so many new faces. It's just a totally new process for the family, for the patient. But then we're also asking, what are your number one concerns? It might not be communication the first few visits. It might be ambulatory. It might be getting around in their house. It might be swallowing. So if we kind of see communication is on the back burner right now, we won't get so much in depth into it, but we will give them that contact information. And I think what makes us a great team, Arianna and I, is that we do have ways that we tell each other who we can follow up with. So we have everyone kind of written down. We put patients and families on our radar to make sure, like, hey, they did seem a little overwhelmed. We kind of just gave them basic information. Maybe we should give them a call in 2 weeks to make sure that they don't have any questions left over.
Now,
Yeah, and it is important for us.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's important for us mostly to make sure the families know they can contact us even if they're not at clinic. And I think that's one of the biggest things, that they might process it 2.5 weeks later, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, and suddenly they're like, someone mentioned something about this. And if we haven't already contacted them, we just want them to know that we are here at whatever point they may need us, because it is about them and where they are in their journey in, whatever assistance they may need communication wise.
Arianna, it's interesting that we're having a little bit of an audio hiccup, maybe where you hear me like 10 seconds later. And I'm not editing that out because I think that maybe part of your conversation you have with caregivers is how they need to be patient with their loved one, right? Because you don't just tell the person living with ALS about the communication devices. I'm sure that you are communicating with their loved ones, whether it's a family or a child or someone else in their family. Here's how you can be a better listener. Arianna first, and I'm not going to interrupt you this time. How do you communicate that to the caregivers about how to manage that aspect of communication, which is listening?
Yeah, I think that is one of the hardest ones, really, but it is ultimately because we're trying to both fit the family with the best device that will fit for the family, right? But we're trying to make sure that whatever is the best fit for the patient, the family can support. And I think it's also, we have to listen to what the patient wants, and then we have to have a full discussion of what would work best in your home environment. And that is difficult for us to see oftentimes because we're not in the home with them. And so we do have other resources. We do refer to Bridging Voice, and so they can get a better layout of what's happening in the home. But it really is, it's an ongoing conversation to make sure that everyone is truly listening to one another for what both the patient needs and wants, and then what the family needs and wants for the patient, but making sure that is supporting the patient's needs and making sure the family is both supported as we communicate. Maybe if the patient's needs or the patient's wants are very different from what the family perceives their need is. And it's a lot of education, and it's not one conversation. It's making sure that we're opening the conversation as fluidly as possible, and then offering the options that we have, and then having them make a decision together with us, but mostly so they can communicate to one another what they think would fit their home and their lifestyle too.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest point is it's an ongoing conversation, like you said, Arianna. Sometimes it can be hard for caregivers because they anticipate the patients and their loved ones' needs, and they just want to help, which is so wonderful, and that's what they're there for. We have so many loving family members and caregivers, and we always, I think, acknowledge that and see that too. And it is a hard conversation, but what I try to do, especially if they are using alternative communication, whether it is writing or direct selection with the speech generating device, I always try and model it within the appointments or the consults, and always try and not either talk over them or finish their sentences, which a lot of people will do. I even try and do that in my own personal life. It's so hard because all of us can do that when you're a parent, a sibling, aunt, uncle, friend. So it is hard not to do it, especially with AAC devices. There are those word prediction options, and that can come up. So caregivers will, okay, this is what you need, and this is, I remember you said this before. This is the question that you wanted to ask. So I always try to model that good listening. And then I also will always direct my questions or statements by asking the patient's name and say, this is what we want, right? This is what we've decided before. So kind of making our plan, what we've said in the past or that day, that plan is concrete, and always confirming that over and over as well.
So, Chloe, that reminds me of how I feel like working here has changed how I communicate as well, and changes my empathy towards communication. I have two I have two young kids, and one of them was upset about their homework yesterday, and I feel calm and I'm going to let him air it out, and I know I am not going to shout over him, even though there's that feeling in me that I want to just tell him to stop. And do you feel, Chloe and then Arianna, so I don't interrupt either of you, do you feel like working in this space leads you to be a better listener in your own life outside of ALS?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think I hope it does. I definitely think I have taken some things from even my education in my master's program. I think learning from everyday patients and clients and their families do have those aha moments where I'm like, wow, at work, I really need to take this away and apply this in my life too, because if I'm not practicing it, it's hard for me to recommend it, right? I don't want to be a hypocrite, so I definitely try, but I always say too, in any population, we're humans sometimes, so we have to give ourselves grace in moments if, we are talking over someone or we try to finish as a parent, as a caregiver, as a therapist, I think we're just coming from a loving and caring place, so to always have that awareness and mindset of trying to be the best communicator and best listener in every settings, but sometimes there are hiccups, and that's okay.
Yeah, I would say working within clinic and just being a speech pathologist in general and having a wide variety of patients and personalities, it definitely has helped for sure in my personal life to be a better listener and to really sit and think about what that person needs in the moment. And I would say especially it has helped just sit for a moment and see if they're done speaking, and then waiting to see. And oftentimes even friends or family will say, like, I don't want advice, I just want to vent. You're like, okay, great, I know my role, I'm listening, I'm agreeing, I'm supporting. And I will say in clinic that often happens. You could tell families are there to let it all out. And then once they let it out, you go, okay, you listen and say, where do you think we fit in what you need? And maybe take something from what they said and mention it. And so I do hope it's made me a better listener, that's for sure. I'm sure my family does too.
Yeah, I do think, which we don't talk about too much, Arianna, together, you and I, but I think we do have great skills in observing people and their emotions and maybe kind of picking up on tones and body language. So I think that does, in our, I think our skill set has just kind of naturally allowed us to do that, especially in clinics too, when maybe a parent, a patient or a caregiver is saying something, but maybe we're like, your body language or your facial expressions might not be matching that. So, but we can really read people sometimes. So I do think maybe that has given us some good insight and kind of telling.
Yeah, I do agree. I also think that has helped us even, I don't want to say pull back the information we're giving, but I think it definitely has helped us say, like, okay, maybe I need to slow down.
Yeah.
And just stop for a second and say, why don't we just look at this sheet for a moment? Or what do you think about this one thing in particular? So we can focus in on one thing and then expand off of that. So I do agree. I think that has helped us because it is a lot of body language. Someone might say, like, yep, we want to do that. And they're just staring ahead and you're like, okay, we don't have to do it yet. And this is just so and the resource that you then can use to get there if you eventually want to. And so you're right. I think it has definitely helped in clinic. That's for sure.
Being a good listener means being aware and paying attention in a lot of different ways, which is also how you're good at your job at monitoring the progression in someone's communication and their ability to communicate. So, how do you monitor things like dysarthria? How do you monitor dysarthria and other language issues that someone can have? Do you have a measurement, or do you have things that you'll tell a caregiver, hey, you should look out for this and come report back to us in a few months because you want to get both the patient's perspective and the caregiver's perspective?
Are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
No one wants to talk over anyone, so no one's
Yeah, I know we all waited very patiently.
We're really, really good listeners. Yes, we definitely. So one of our biggest things that we do is monitoring the dysarthria signs and symptoms. So we will kind of give an outline to patients and family members, things to look out for, or if they already are presenting with some of those things. Mainly we talk about their vocal quality. So we look for slow or labored speech. We look for raspy or hoarseness in their vocal quality, strained voice, maybe pushing a little bit. Sometimes we also work hand in hand with the respiratory therapist too to talk about their breath support, because that can also affect their voicing, and also the slushy sounding, the slow and laborious speech as well. So all of those things, those characteristics, we really monitor very, very closely, and we have an ear for it now. I think we've learned like over the years, and kind of dicing out every little quality there. And some patients will come in and say, no, my voice is the same, or no, I don't, or it's gotten really worse. So we're kind of gotten a little bit better at that, and we do use a rating scale that we also put in our AAC evaluation. So, and we rate them by stages. So stage 1 through 5. 1 is no detectable speech disorder, all the way to 5 where there's no useful speech at all. So there's all of those in between. I think I would say stage 3 would probably be like a moderate dysarthria, so reduced in overall speech intelligibility, which is how much communication listeners can understand that person.
Yeah, and within that, there's so much you're looking for when you are assessing if their speech does seem either slurred, or if their voice is changing and they're hoarse. And we're assessing all of that, and we ask questions on how they feel, and we're also using words that they'll say. So if someone says, I feel really dry, or it just feels really hard, we then can tease out, okay, well, what are the reasons for that? And like Chloe said, we're constantly working with respiratory therapy, the entire clinic, but especially with PT, if their trunk support isn't as strong as it was before, then we know with their breath support, it's going to be harder to really take in a deep breath too. And so we're trying to see not just what our clinical judgment is, but how the patient and the family feels about it. Because in some cases, the patient will say, there's been no change. And even if the family says, yes, there is a change, but it's not that great, if they still have clear enough speech, we want to see if they're interested in some sort of voice banking or voice messaging, something like that. We want to see what their options are, if they might be interested in a speech generating device down the line. We try to be pretty upfront with why we're asking the questions, what their speech sounds like, how hard it is to get the speech out. They may be pretty clear, but they might be using a lot of effort to get that clear voice. And if it's a deep, and then they're getting 2 or 3 words out, they're clear. Those 2 or 3 words are very clear, but how much energy are you using to really pull that air in, get those words out? How forcefully were you pushing? Are they really tired after maybe just a 5-minute conversation when they're only getting a couple of words out here and there? Are they getting their full thoughts out? Are they not? So within all of that, we want to see how they're speaking and how clear it is. And we also want to see how much energy they're using to try to get that voice out. Are they pushing? Does it sound really hoarse and strained, like they're forcing from here? Are they suddenly, you can see the full body fatigue too. So when we're looking for all of their speech intelligibility and how clear they are and how easy it is for listeners to understand them, we're also looking for their longevity and trying to also give education on either using your breath support if you can to either keep you going a little bit longer, or maybe pulling back. And maybe that's when we want to introduce some sort of AAC, but we monitor it very closely, and we will be very upfront with patients in sessions. If they still have a pretty clear voice and it's a little effort, we'll talk about voice banking or voice messaging. Or if the next time we see them in clinic and they don't think their voice has changed at all, and we're like, we're noticing X, Y, and Z, that's when we're really talking to PT and respiratory and the whole clinic and asking, how much of a change has it been, and how much do they perceive the change, or the family perceives the change, because we want to try to give them then the best opportunity to get used to some AAC if they're willing, if they want certain types and fit them. So it really is about monitoring their speech and clarity as much as how much effort they're putting out to get there. Because we want them to be comfortable in the end while expressing their thoughts, and we don't want them to isolate, but we don't want them to be completely exhausted after they try to say what they want to.
So you mentioned voice banking. When do you bring up the conversation about voice banking? And what does that entail? Is it something that's easy to do? Is it getting better all the time? Tell us more.
So we voice banking, say we meet someone the first session and they have a really clear, strong voice. We will mention it right away because the idea with voice banking is it is your insurance policy. So in case your voice ends up changing and in case you want a speech generating device down the line, we want you to have the option. So we will mention it right away. We'll explain what it is. And then we really do outsource. And we have a very close partnership with Bridging Voice. And Bridging Voice is like an amazing free resource, especially for people in New Jersey. And they will actually set them up with the voice banking, and they'll send the microphone to the home. It's all remote, and so everything gets sent to the family, and they're told how they're going to record the voice either on their computer or via an app on their phone. But we do try to talk to them right away. The only caveat to that is if someone doesn't have a voice that's fully functional and won't sound great in voice banking, and it's also too much for them to do because there would be so much pushing and we don't want them to fatigue, we may not mention it. But for those who do have a strong voice and are able to be understood when they're speaking, we do try to mention it right away and give them all the information about it.
Arianna, you also mentioned something that really jumped out at me is your conversation with PT and OT in the clinic setting and how important communication is with that. Excuse me. I imagine that when you're talking with the person with ALS and the caregiver, you're not just saying that because talking is nice, but also about safety. Do you use any of those kind of conversations with people about, making sure that they have the language and the ability to communicate certain things so that a caregiver is able to help lift them or help with feeding or other things so that they're comfortable and safe?
Yeah, oftentimes that is one of our first questions. Like, how are you communicating your needs? How are you speaking on the phone? How are you asking for help? And if they're really not doing those things, then that's when we're like, okay, why don't you think you're doing them? Is it hard to call for help? Is it hard to ask for it? When you try to say it, are people not understanding you? And we do actually try to approach AAC from that kind of standpoint, because sometimes people don't want to talk to their loved ones using a voice that doesn't seem fully like theirs. And if we go with the safety point, we're like, we want you to be safe. Your family wants you to be safe. Many times patients are a little more receptive to AAC because they're realizing, how am I going to call for help if I fall? How am I calling outside of the house, not just from room to room? And we do ask that right away, especially if someone is saying that they've had a couple falls. And we also talk about any sort of life alerts and those kinds of things. But that is one of the biggest things for us to mention to them, like your safety, your falls, your communication with your family, even choking. We want to make sure people are able to say if they're having a hard time eating, and if something, isn't going down easy, we don't want to keep eating those things. So we do try to bring that up, I would say, right away. Wouldn't you say, Chloe?
Yeah, no, I would say that's one of our first top 5 questions, and assessing if they're really safe, and if they are in an unsafe scenario, how are they able to communicate it, and all those other points, if you're not clear, if you're just unable to communicate, how are you calling for help? Another point too, aside from life alert, is also sometimes if we do have patients that have just a low vocal volume too, we will show them some Bluetooth speakers and alerts within the home. So if they need to call for help, if they just need, their pillow turned, or they can't reach the remote. So it's kind of like an in-house doorbell, I kind of describe it. So they can just alert their caregiver, or, whoever is in the home that they need help. Because sometimes that's also another characteristic, that low vocal volume, and they can't project their voice enough to kind of get the attention within the home. So yeah, that along with also being independent and being able to ask for help, not just in the home, and being a participant in their own life, especially in a doctor appointment, especially in the clinics too. One of my biggest things that I say alongside of, the in-home stuff is you want to be your own participant in your life, to be able to ask a question to the doctor, to us, to, or order your own food. You don't want to you don't have to rely on your caregiver, even though it's nice. And of course, that's what they're there for, to do it yourself. And there's ways that you can do it yourself still.
That's amazing. Now, one thing I know that you don't do yourself on your own is provide care to people with ALS, because it's a whole team effort. And thankfully, it doesn't all just rely on Chloe. It doesn't all just rely on Arianna. So since I have you here as a captive audience, Chloe and then Arianna, so we take our turns, tell us the experience is like with Dr. Mary Sedarous and the team at HMH, and how you are there for patients with ALS from diagnosis on.
So I just really love Dr. Sedarous. I have learned so much from her as a professional. Personally, I think she's just an overall wonderful human. I just learn so much from her every clinic, how she handles herself, how she delivers information and these diagnoses. I'm just in awe of her, and also the clinic too. I'm proud of us for being, involved in this clinic. I'm proud of myself and Arianna and I'm just so proud to be involved, and honored to be in everyone's life with, the other therapists and the patients and the families. I truly, it's been such I think, a blessing for me. I don't want to speak for Arianna. I really come in contact with so many wonderful people. And I do feel that we really are there as a huge support system for the families, for the patients. It is overwhelming. We just want to be an ear for them. We just want to be a friend, a therapist. We just want to be everything. I wish we had all the time in the world to help them. Sometimes, it can be overwhelming for us too, but it's all because we're very caring and we take our job very seriously.
Yeah, and really, Chloe said it all. Working with and for Dr. Sedarous in the clinic is it's unbelievable. She is so knowledgeable and kind and caring, and having her as the guiding light for our clinic is, I would say, one of the most amazing parts of my career, or maybe the most amazing part of my career so far. She is an amazing leader too. She truly keeps the clinic so open, and she wants to hear everything from everyone, and she wants to hear from every single person. And each person that speaks, it's as if, no one else is in the room. She's very focused on you and your information, and she wants to make sure she's getting everything right for the patients, and recommending things in the moment that are needed, and also putting certain things on the back burner, like, okay, next clinic, this might be what we're doing. And it truly is such a privilege to be part of it, to be part of such a disciplinary, like a multidisciplinary clinic like this is, I feel, an honor. And we're very lucky, because this kind of clinic would be amazing for so many different diagnoses. And now being in the clinic with our ALS population and with the families that we do serve, you really see how necessary it is to have that availability of so many professionals truly working together. And in-house, we're not over Zoom talking about patients. We're not seeing patients on separate days. Having them truly come in that day, all of us get to discuss, open discussion. We can coordinate with OT and PT as we need. Dr. Sedarous basically guiding us all through the conversation and what our long-term goals are for the patients based on what the patients are saying. It's truly one of a kind, and it's something that I absolutely do not take for granted. And I think that meeting the patients we have and supporting the patients we have, whether they have come to the outpatient clinic with Chloe and I for evaluations, or just helping them via email and phone calls and guiding them toward what they are looking for, has really been such an amazing experience. And I'm also, like Chloe said, so proud to be part of it. We have gotten some great feedback from families, and we take all of that to heart. Everything they say would be easier, or certain things are harder, and it's a lot. It's truly a lot, but for the families, and it's a long day. And I do think that we have learned so much in communicating with one another as professionals, and communicating with patients, and patients communicating with us. It truly has been amazing.
Last question, Arianna. Speaking of the clinic and Dr. Sedarous, we are proud as ALS United Mid-Atlantic to partner with HMH, and I wanted to hear from you, how important is it to be able to partner with ALS United Mid-Atlantic? I saw you at our ALS United walk. You have invited us in to tour the clinic multiple times. So is this partnership important for making sure that your patients can get added care and support after they leave the clinic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the ALS Walk was one of the first things that really brought ALS United Mid-Atlantic to my forefront, and just seeing the turnout with those patients coming in and how much support they appreciated from ALS United was, I would say, an eye-opening experience, because at least I'll speak for myself and not Chloe. I didn't know for the longest time before we entered into the clinic, I didn't know who our partnerships were and where they came from and what they provided. And since being in clinic and seeing what the patients, how they're being supported from different places and who's going in, ALS United has provided quite a bit of positive impacts and in-home services. And we've had so many people say, like, we don't need X, Y, and Z from you because ALS United has already given it to us. Or we'll ask them, who are you in touch with? What organizations? If they're in the appropriate area, obviously, if they're too far up north, we can't refer, but the ALS United in general has been amazing for our patients, the resource to actually get things in the home, because again, that's where we can't go. We can't go in the home. We can't see what they have and what supports they need for the families, and they may not know what to ask for. So having ALS United go in has been a game changer, because we can support from afar, and then you guys can actually support from within in ways, and that's integral for our patients and their families.
Yeah, I agree. I think just having a home-based community, whether it's caregiver support, aids, equipment, loaner devices, or in contact with loaner closets, just an overall community of people, an ALS community, I think is so important for patients and families, because this is a very specific community, and it's always nice to have people at your beck and call to help you with so many different things. And like Arianna said, we can't go in the homes, and that's kind of where ALS United, they pick up, and you guys pick up for us, that we unfortunately can't do those things, and that's so important. So, and we only get a snapshot of our patients too, whether it's in the outpatient clinic or in the ALS clinic. It's a small snapshot, so we can't go inside their home. We can't really see, through the hallways, up the stairs, things like that. So, and that's so important, because that's their home. That's where they are every day. That's where they sleep. So it's just the most important partnership to have with you guys, because, it just makes everything well-rounded.
I can tell that communication is very important for both of you, because you've communicated so well the work you do and your connection to our patients. And normally my conversations on these topics can take 30 minutes, and really, obviously, we could keep going on for hours. So for those listening, if you want to learn more about the work that Chloe and Arianna do and to connect with the team at HMH, you can go to our website at alsmidatlantic.org, where we link to all of our ALS treatment centers that we partner with. We're proud to partner with many treatment centers here in our Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware region. You can follow us on social media at ALS Mid-Atlantic, and we'll make sure to tag and put the links for this on our description on the YouTube and the podcast as well. Please continue to subscribe, comment, review, like, all that stuff you have to do on social media, because there's always more to learn. Chloe and Arianna are helping with a lot of advances in care, and I'm sure the next time we talk, you'll have even more progress that you've made. Arianna and Chloe, thank you so much for speaking today, and thank you even more for what you're doing for our patients.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
And again, please follow us at www.alsmidatlantic.org. Together, we will end ALS.